It is Blueies and Shoeys. We are back, and it is round 2 of rugby's greatest rivalry. And I'm joined by a man with a ginger beard, a brother from another mother, from back in Joburg, my old pal Dwight Eagleoff. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, thank you, sir. Very good. It's hard not to be excited when it's a All Black Springbok test week, especially after a bit of ref blaming, bit of saltiness. So I'm lapping it up.
Well, Dwight is behind enemy lines at the moment. So he's based in Hamilton in New Zealand. You still doing a little bit of coaching?
No, not for a while, but still love the game.
You've been in the setup, you know the game well on the ground.
Yeah.
So it's going to be great to get your insights, mate. And first question, have you worn your Springbok shirt out and about?
Only in Fiji. I'll be wearing it tomorrow, though. I'll be wearing it tomorrow into the office. It's
Just for that nostalgia feeling of feeling like you're back in Joburg, just checking over your shoulder as you're pulling into your driveway, making sure some angry Kiwi fan isn't coming up to maybe not hijack you, but maybe slash your tyres.
Yeah, cross the road quickly.
Before we move on, I've got to thank everyone for their kind support. Unbelievable views on my last podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm sure and hope you'll enjoy today's chat. Thank you for your kind words. There can be differences of opinion, but if there are any nasty words, relay those to Dwight. And anything about me, just remember what your mum said when you were growing up. If you've got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. But seriously, thank you to everyone. There's a lot of bad actors on the internet, the World Wide Web. And it was great to see everyone's comments. I do appreciate it. First things first, if anyone is unaware, this is Blueies and Shoeys. And the idea is when you make a prediction and it doesn't come off, you do a shoey. And so we've got a Sia Khaleesi signature shoe from Freedom of Movement. What better shoe to do it in? So despite the Springboks winning, we're knocking it over. Here we go.
This guy just needs an excuse to drink.
Right, we're back on. Good Lord, that was cold. Beautiful. Back to what matters this weekend. First things first, if we just sort of sum up a couple of points, mate, from last week. Gator McKenzie, tell you what, that lad is living, I think he's almost living everyone's dream. He's just, sports minister, going to all the sports events, loving life, really getting the public involved and all behind the Springboks.
He's a sports minister doing at least half a job, which is a huge improvement on anything else we've had for years. He's got a checkered past, but he seems to be delivering the goods. He's passionate. He's doing the right things. I just see he's made a big memorandum of understanding today to get sport back into state schools and functioning again. So kudos to the man. Keep doing the good stuff, man.
Yeah, if he follows through, I think there was some word on some of the Olympians and not being paid and having to expensing their own journeys. So he seems to be apologising of what's gone before him and saying that he's going to right some wrongs. So that's amazing. And I know we were just chatting about it before we went live, mate. Something again I didn't sort of quite touch on. We can't go through everything from last week's game in huge detail, but just that sort of meme, Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the screen when Ulrich Lowe sort of received that kickoff and then gave Mark Talea a little taste of his own medicine. It was just that sort of split second that, it's easy to miss, but the athleticism and just the kahunas to pull that off, mate, was just it was a little bit something special.
It just also highlights the kind of evolution of these Springboks. Like the All Blacks in particular, are just so used to us just T-boning them, just coming straight at you. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Finau found that out, that we can still do that pretty well. Just the level of coaching, these new players that have come through, that and are coming through the system, to put on footwork like that and then still go through some big boys just shows you how far we've come. But it's also was quite a nice change this season having a number 8 take kickoffs and take it straight through the guts.
Yeah, look, very hard to ever criticise the beautiful rugged nose of Quacker Smith, but I certainly think, flank and whether it's starting or like coming off the bench is his best position. Can I ask, was the Bungi Manumbi try, was that mentioned in New Zealand at all?
Mate, I have not stopped hearing about it. It was on the news to the point where even on the breakdown they had a flow chart. And the long story short is you can lose the ball, there can be separation, and it's still a try. And that's what happened.
Yeah, look, make these rules more complex, the more it sets things up for arguments and debates.
Exactly.
And big refereeing decisions, keep it simple. That was absolutely a knock-on. However,
even though
Sasha's kick was probably unfairly ruled out in terms of conversion of that try.
Yeah, but
you've got Khaleesi's tackle on, or rather Kane's tackle on Khaleesi.
Hang on,
and then
before we get ahead of the non-try, everyone goes, "Oh, but he knocked it on." But if they just go and rewind 2 seconds, they'll see that the referee was holding advantage to South Africa anyway. So that same green train was coming, man.
Hey mate, I love your biased opinion here. I'm all for it, but I'll play the devil's advocate in this instance. But look, you got the double banking. So in short, the Irish TMO was certainly sipping on a few good whiskies upstairs, and probably missed half the game. So I think if we not sort of labour on the point too much, if Bongi's a no try, the double banking to Sasha's kick to Kane's tackle, let's be real. I mean, as South Africans, we're probably some of the worst for it in terms of blaming the refs. But in this instance, it's certainly the wrongs evened out at the very least from my perspective. And if there's anyone to blame, it's the TMO.
The one thing I will say is, and this been a bit of my response here is, you want a quicker game, so you got the quicker game. Now don't get upset about it. But what I enjoyed was that, and it was a bit strange here, like New Zealand is struggling so much economically at the moment. Like they don't even send their commentators over. They're still here in New Zealand and they commentate. It's obviously they just delay the feed a little bit. But because of that, you could hear all the comms. So the TMO and the referee were still speaking, and you could hear it pretty clearly. But also there were certain aspects where the referee saw it live, and he just said, "I've seen that, I'm happy with it." The Khaleesi tackle was one of them. He said, "I've seen it. Both players are dipping. There's mitigation." And so the TMO didn't have to get involved. Yeah, but they're doing that because they want the game sped up. So you can't.
And that's what I'm a huge advocate for, because it ruins the spectacle, especially for non-hardcore rugby union fans. We've got to be, as a collective, getting more fans on board. And when they're watching the game, and they can go to the bar, go to the toilet, go have a shower, and still come back and a decision has been made, you're going to lose fans.
Yeah.
We need quicker decisions. I mean, if you remember the World Cup final, the obvious knock-on for the first New Zealand try that was disallowed, I mean, they had to look at that 15 times. I mean, good Lord, mate, one look at that, it's knock-on, let's move on.
And coming back to something like 4 or 5 phases before.
Yeah, exactly, mate, 100%. Right, moving on. The chaps on SA Rugby, Dells was discussing the shortest route to victory, which is, again, the more forward-dominated rugby, and seeing the Tony Brown experiment, as it were. I'm not sure if it's an experiment. It's a actual strategic game plan. He's seen that as a bit of a waste of time, I would say. Maybe that might be a little bit too harsh in terms of my commentary on that. What's your thoughts, mate, in terms of the Springboks evolving from, I guess, naturally a more forward-dominated game?
Listen, I'm all for everything Russie's doing. I think he's just bringing more kind of strings to the bow, so to speak. But also, it's by doing that, he's increasing his player pool massively. The traditional model of South African rugby was only based on a very small select group of the population who had access to play rugby and who were selected. That's changed. And so, by what Russie's trying to do is you've 6 kilo Cheslin Colby's running around out there, which before there'd maybe only be one of them and it would be really hard. Whereas now you've got him and there's suddenly a whole string of smaller little players behind him, but that brings something else. So I think it's great because it opens the player pool and the base. But I think also it wins test matches. And the reason I say that is, the reason we used to lose to the All Blacks was because we couldn't score more than 2 tries.
Great point.
It was the same as when Ireland started getting really good. We struggled against them because we suddenly couldn't just kick 5 penalties and win a test match. We had to score tries.
When those teams found parity, we were then sort of limited with options, right? And we're looking at a crop of some of the most talented backs in the world. Mm-hmm. It's criminal. Not to utilise those skill sets.
And the last part of it that guys just don't understand, but I think Russie's got a good grasp of it, and we kind of had to get through one in this last World Cup, is sometimes you might be the best knockout team, but you've got to get through your pool. And you've got to be getting bonus points to get through your pool. I mean, like we had that horrible pool at the last World Cup. Because of when the draw's done, that doesn't mean it won't happen again. I mean, imagine you get stuck in a pool with, at the moment, France are going down the rankings. Could be 3 of those teams could be in a pool.
Someone's going to get a doozy of a pool, right? And it could be us again. And so let's not get ahead of ourselves. It could be a bad day in one of those games for us. We could lose a tight one. And then the next thing, the pressure's on. And there's 3 points I would make really quickly on those is, say the Springboks are probably the best forwards in the world, right, in terms of power, physicality and the like. When you're a 9.5 out of 10, how much more improvement can you make, and how much extra work is it to make that marginal little extra gain versus making more use out of your backs from that perspective? Equally, Tony Brown comes on. We try a lot. These are the years to try it, certainly over the next couple of years. So we may go where we were operating at a 3 out of 10 with our backs, we may go to an 8 or a 9 and then come back to a 5 or 6. So what we're seeing now, isn't necessarily what's going to happen in 4 years. Yeah. But what it does allow us to do is really give it a go, because what I have sort of noted, the effort that you may put out going out wide and the energy spent attacking will naturally have an impact on your ability to execute the brilliant rush defence and being as tight on that defence. So do we drop down from a 8 or 9 out of 10 on defence for the ability to score more points? I don't think it has to either be it's this or that, depending on the game. You've spoken a lot about weather being a great equaliser, especially when the weather's poor. So we will have the ability to adapt our game to depending on the opponent, the conditions. And then just finally, mate, while we're at it, let's not forget, I don't know if you've seen the state of those French. I wouldn't say they're all French, because half of them are from South Africa and other parts of the world. But I don't know if you've seen the size of them. They're not exactly small boys. The Irish seem to have be pretty revved up for that second test. So for us to really just think we're going to outpower every team on every occasion is naive.
Yeah, and that's it. And teams just learnt that to match us physically, and you can do that with sports science now. Saturday was such a reversal of my years growing up and going to Ellis Park to support them, where we always lost in the last bloody 20 minutes, never won.
Well, 100%, mate. But also, and just remember, like Rassie, when he came on board initially, stripped it back really to start off from that foundation, and then obviously we had the 18 months to 2 years out post 2019 World Cup for the Lions, and he stripped that back again. So we had to play to the DNA of its ultimate piece. But if you're giving Cheslin Colby 2 opportunities a game and he's scoring 1 try, imagine giving him 7 or 8 opportunities in a game. Do you remember, as we said about Talaya, how he's receiving the ball and having to beat 4 or 5 players just to make 10 metres versus, Dougie Howlett, Rokathoka getting the ball with 1 player to beat and he's definitely scoring a try. Yeah. So it's just that ability to give ourselves a couple more opportunities to beat opponents in different ways.
Yep, and we're doing it really well. You've seen it with our transition attack. Like we putting really good shots on, or we're winning turnovers.
Yep.
And as soon as they get that ball out into the space, we look so dangerous.
We'll digress, but let's jump into this week's team, mate.
Yep.
What are your first impressions?
What's interesting is just looking at some of the stats of the team so far. So, everyone goes, oh, South Africa is a set-piece team. They just do scrums and lineouts, and that's all they do. And, the All Blacks are exciting, and they have all these other bits and pieces. Well, the Springbok lineouts are third worst in the competition, and the All Blacks have got the best lineouts and the best scrum. So, that says that our scrum's actually been quite poor, but I think we've just been penalised a bit. So we're only at 75%, they're at 94%. When I look at some of that, I go, geez, no wonder Russie's kind of going a bit more to the tried and tested this weekend. I really think this is a game they want to win. If they win this game with a bonus point, they get to lock up 2 trophies this weekend. I think their big thing is we're not just going to win the World Cup, we're going to win every trophy we can win. So, and that's why, Siya Kolisi is going to play with a broken cheekbone.
Walking around Ellis Park, taking photos of fans, and I'm like, dude, surely, how on earth are you doing that with your face?
Yeah, exactly.
But, I mean, a hero, a man of the people. But, yeah, you're 100% right. Obviously, it looks like the 100% go for the win. And I said this, don't grow a heartbeat in terms of the Springboks, because I felt after Nelspruit, Razor was dusting off his black suit and putting on his black tie to walk to a press conference to accept a job, that we actually grew some feelings for a team that's given us the biggest and worst beatings that South Africa have ever experienced. Yeah. And we started off soft at Ellis Park. Let's not grow a heartbeat. New Zealand, for some reason, after beating us 7 times on the trot, 8 times on the trot, never grew a heartbeat. Yeah, if you open up our heart, hopefully you just see a tin can, and we go for it, mate.
Nah, they're going to go for it. I'm fairly certain. They're on a bit of a streak, kind of in Cape Town. They've won out of the last 4 tests. They won 3 of them, lost 1. That was the one against the British and Irish Lions. But listen, the All Blacks always do well in Cape Town. Hey, it's not just the Cape Crusaders. It's back at sea level. The stadium is not right on top of you, so it's not as intimidating. They've won 4 out of their last 5 games there. And 3 of those they were down at half time. So we can't take our foot off the throttle. We got to be good, and we got to be up against it. But the Boks won a bold legacy. They're 3-0 against the All Blacks last 3 games, average winning of 11 points. But that was London really blowing that margin out. But, the longest ever win streak the Springboks have had against the All Blacks is 6. They've beaten us for much longer periods than 6 tests.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, the only other time that's happened, and that was all the way in bloody 1937 to 1949.
Nowhere near the professional area. I think the professional area, it is 3, I think, that we've done on the bounce. So I think they've had about 8 on the bounce, and they've done that a few times. How do you see the game plan changing, mate? Obviously, Pollard starting is the big one for me.
Pollard starting is the big one, and probably Villy too, because he just brings a lot of comms, he brings a lot of direction. Thought there were 3 issues with the Springboks at Ellis Park. The first one was especially on a transition defence, so when we've turned the ball over, is our defence was disconnected. The guy that will sort that out will be Villy, because he'll be at the back shouting, putting guys into places. So he'll be there. The other part that disappointed me, and it'll be interesting to see how we do it, but I just didn't like our variations from the line-out. We kept playing straight off the top every time, and often at the front off the top, which is some of the worst ball you can attack with. And that's what led to the intercept. It was front ball off the top. You're giving Barrett time to move forward and pick where he's going to go, and he read it like a book. So I'm hoping there'll be a bit more variation around that. I still don't know how Russie managed to get Nokia back on the field, but he did, and he sort of lined it out. And then the last one is, and this is going to sound very traditionalist, but we often went wide or middle wide. They might go a bit more narrow and just earn that right a bit more, and maybe just a bit more blunt force trauma.
Punched it up the guts a bit more. As you said, maybe the old statement, earn your right to go out wide. Right?
Damien McKenzie is going to be in that first channel. Just send Delende over him. put the big boys to clean around the corner a couple times. And
he's been acting as a bit of a playmaker since Tony Brown came on, hasn't he? So
yeah,
it'd be good just to remind them what he's about, because himself and Bundyaki will be some of the best crash ball in world rugby. So
yeah.
100%, mate. I mean, look, this will probably be certainly in itself a good podcast for anyone that wants to listen. Is where we see these players, in the next few years, and who we think, the likes of Peter Steff, the likes of Sia Khaleesi, Andre Pollard, Vili LaRue, they can't all make it to the next World Cup. So we'll discuss that in a separate edition. But to your point, I think certainly well made around Vili bringing that calm. I think me and you have both had our trials and tribulations, probably as the rest of South Africa, but he's a brilliant playmaker. He is experienced. I think Fussy had a great game. Yeah. But there was a couple of points there, especially when he called for the mark and he kicked it out within a second. It's like, just take your time a bit, a deep breath. But he was revved up. I mean, the kick and chase, another little Leonardo DiCaprio moment where you're like, come on, mate, get it going.
I mean, listen, the thing I really enjoyed with him, because it's what's kept him out of the team, is obviously been his defence. He was one-on-one with Ethan Blackadder twice, and he sunk him. So
I spoke about that in the last podcast. That first 10-15 minutes, mate, was, I mean, it started off with Colby getting penalised at the kickoff, and then they kept the ball for what seemed to be the best part of the half of the first half. Sevilla getting tackled out with I think a double act, Fussy and Dialende, and then Blackadder on both right and left wing was just. Oh, you could hear the hits coming through the TV. It was unbelievable, and for us to only concede 7 points through that is a little, while also taking a yellow card, is a little feather in the cap, for us. Yeah. On the bench, mate, 5-3.
Yeah, listen, I mean, just looking at the team in general, it's actually quite balanced. I think this front row is one of my favourites. Locks, everything's sorted. So, no, I like the look of it. Good to see Canon Modi back too. He's been out for a while. I like the fact that Lukanya Arms on the bench. I think he'll he's never going to panic. So if it's a tight test, it's pressure's on. He'll just come in and do something silky.
Ice in his veins, mate.
Thing to see how they go, and it will be a big test for them. But I definitely believe that Jaden Henrikse and Sasha Feinberg Mngomezulu are going to be the future pairing for us. So it's going to be interesting to see how they come on for, say, the last 30 minutes.
It's a lot more of he snipes around the edges, Henrikse. He's not got the speed of a Reinach and a Grant Williams.
No, but he
seems to really orchestrate. He's a little bit more faff in that regard, where he seems to orchestrate the game.
Kicking game, kicks off
both. I really like him. It's interesting. I mean, two minds about our scrum halves. One, it's brilliant because we've got so many. And such great options. One we probably don't see outside of Faf. We haven't seen a run of one or two for a while because of the changes. So it is that quandary of actually who is our 1 and 2 best players, in terms of that position. But, certainly, again, moving forward, talking about the next World Cup, again, as we'll do, Kobus Reinach's 34, I think. So again, he's aging. So, he's not someone that's likely to make the next World Cup. So we do want to see the likes of Hendrikse getting hopefully a run of games so he can really build that.
Yeah. Well, same as Grant Williams. I mean, this is essentially his second start, but his only other start, he got knocked out in 10 seconds. Yeah.
Before we shift on, the bomb squad, is the bomb squad not only the quality of the player, the likes of a debate, who's better, Bongi or Malcolm, the front row and the like. We don't seem to certainly lose anything at all with the guys coming on. Is it just that, or is it the fact that South Africa, unlike any other nation, bring on 4, 5, 6 players in one go, and therefore as a collective they're actually able, they really are a squad in that essence?
Yeah, it's combinations of all of that. I mean, part of the reason we probably also haven't gone with it is the Locks injury. So, I mean, essentially they're saying that, when I look at this team for the weekend, that Nokia and Eben probably have to go 80 minutes. To be fair, they both probably can.
The
But I mean, you just look at the players that we're missing that would usually be part of that bomb squad. The likes of Augias Neymar and Jean Klein. I know they said Murat's been unlucky to miss out. There's still Marco van Staden. You know, the list just goes on and on of the players.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that Thomas du Toit cannot make a Springbok team, he would be the starting prop in any other world team.
yeah, 100%.
He can't even
He
make.
can play both. He can play both.
Yeah.
He can play loose or tight.
So, you know, it's the caliber of player we have is a differentiating factor with the bomb squad, but the way they deployed, if we want to use that bomb analogy, is what makes them so potent and effective. And it's because they, you know, it always takes a bit of time to get into a game, but also they're experienced players. They've been around. They know how to win test matches. And on the last 20 minutes of a game, you want your most experienced players on the park. That's what they've just done so well. And they make you make a lot of tackles. I mean, that was one of the things from the weekend. You know, the Springboks made just, I think it was about 105, 110 tackles. The All Blacks were over 130. And it's those extra tackles of just big guys that are fresh coming at you, makes your legs heavy.
And moving on to the All Blacks, combinations at centre, you know, between a fly half, Mwanga, putting Barrett at 15, and maybe some of those loose forward combinations. Much better size. Fozzie, I think when we Razor coming in, we're going to see big changes. He's going to totally transform this team, and I think he still will do, but it's probably not from a squad selection point of view. We haven't seen big changes there. What's your take on that, mate?
My take is New Zealand rugby's in trouble because they refuse to move into 2024. You know, he can't choose players because they won't select overseas players, which I just think we're too small of a country here to have that. You know, when we've just spent, look how much time we just spent waxing on about senior players getting a bit long in the tooth, but they're mentoring guys coming through. You can clearly see how Pollard is mentoring Sasha Feinberg Mongazulu and how Vili is mentoring Fassi. Well, the All Blacks can't have that because Richie Mwanga is not allowed to be in their squad. You know, Brody Retallick is not allowed to be in their squad. So I think it's a bit hard to pin it just on Razor, because at the end of the day, he's only got 5 teams he can choose players from. And so when you start getting injuries...
And those 5 teams are playing against weak opposition outside themselves in Super Rugby. So you're not being tested.
No.
You're not being tested against the South African might.
Yep.
You're constrained to only picking teams locally. So if you have got that 3rd or 4th option, which could very quickly, in a case of a Tamaiti Williams who's played at the Western Force, then come into New Zealand rugby, and it was quickly looking like he could be the real deal. This lad. I mean, we talk about Springboks being big boys. This lad is 6'4" and 144 kilos.
Yeah, and he's only 22. So yeah, and I've met him, mate. He's big.
He's a unit.
And he
doesn't look it on TV, mate. But yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong though. This team is progressing under Razor. I think Razor's just got to learn Test rugby. Test rugby is not Super Rugby. It's not under the 20s. That's where he's had his success. But also, he lost a lot of just institutional, like here we call it mana. I guess it's like presence. The guy like Darren Shand and Gilbert Inoka, they've been there since the 2000s. Like early 2000s, you know, they got 20 years of All Black experience. Your captain's also gone and changed. So no, it's there, but I do think this team's improving under Razor. It's clear now. You can see how they want to play. The Fozzie, they went through periods we didn't know what the hell they were trying to do. But then also the biggest thing is like the All Blacks have always really been good on skill execution. So under pressure and at high speed, high tempo, when you're tired, that last 20 minutes, always executed well. At the moment, that's maybe where they're not doing. Like Barrett had some kicks. They just
that's where I'm saying. Like if you look at you build that through muscle memory, right? Of being under pressure, but being in tight games, playing against different teams.
That is also, though, there's a large responsibility on that. Yes, the coach creates the environment, but players need to execute on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, this is now, we can look at a one-game instance for the Springboks number of handling errors last week. I don't think that's going to happen this week. But this is a few years now. So, again, it was a Fozzie's problem that they were doing the same thing. You raise a good point there, but I would say the only counter I would say to that is this has been going on for a little while now where they haven't been at that All Black level you expect and from the guys that you would expect it from.
And, players drive those standards.
Yeah.
That's just the frank, honest truth.
100%.
And I mean, you saw TJ Perenara kick that 50-22. Don't get me wrong, it was a good one. But, like, you saw how he was celebrating and reacting to that. And it's like, mate, the All Blacks didn't celebrate like that.
Yeah, well, that plastic energy in relation
exactly.
for Bongi. But, certainly look at when you've got the best part of, 300 caps between Retallick and Whitelock walk out the door. But the thing is, for those two blokes, is you've got guys that barely got a game. Obviously, Barrett's the exception, where South Africa and Russie in particular are using every opportunity to blood youngsters, and obviously that meant that our win record between World Cups was average, to say the least. But what we did do is, we did that because we only had a two-year mark because of COVID, that we actually had to fast forward that sort of growth development of those other players to build that depth. And I just think New Zealand have lost a trick in that regard, not looking ahead, thinking Aaron Smith, the two locks. I mean, how long can Cody Taylor last? No,
the one they're probably missing the most at the moment, and hardly anyone talks about him anymore, but it surprises me, but is the piece that puts that pack together is probably Shannon Frizzell. The blind side.
I mentioned in the last pod, but just as we were seeing a couple of green shoots from him, when you think about Mount Smart, the game that he had where he ran over Villy and ran over everyone, really. Yeah, and it was just starting to look like the long-term Jerome Kano replacement, and now he goes overseas to earn a penny, as you'd expect him quite rightly to do, and now they can't draw on that. Now, look, I thought, okay, well, the benefits are you've got Blackadder, and wow, what a game he had. And now look what we've seen. We've seen him get injured. So, to our point, we've got, the team, we've got Jacobson, Papali'i, Blackadder. I don't know who's the superstar
all three
there.
Of those players you've just named are what I'd classify 6.5.
Well, there we go. Now, Blackadder looked really good, and I thought if he can maintain anywhere near those standards, then you've got another piece. Those are green shoots that, while you might go, we've lost the Rugby Championship, we potentially maybe gone back-to-back losses in South Africa. However, what we have got out of it is potentially Blackadder, Tamaiti Williams, one or two others. We've maybe solved a couple of question marks on the team. Now, Blackadder gets injured. You take one step forward and almost two steps back because, again, you're not building any consistency because you're getting guys at around 20, 30 caps. We still don't know between that bracket of three forwards who's good.
If you had Frizzell in the mix, you can rotate them, you can balance them. Because, to be fair, Blackadder's a fantastic player, but he can't play 4 games on the bounce. He keeps getting injured. I think they'll be very good this week. I'm not sold on some of the selections, to be honest. Before the teams came out, there'll be what they call here a blacklash. And, they'll leave South Africa 1-1 and they'll be pretty happy.
I can see the wordplay there, mate. Genius.
Yeah. Oh, no, they put it in the paper here.
They love it.
They love it. Anything, they love a pun in this place, mate. But I'm not sold on the Lucies. Wallace Atiti starting at blindside flank. Don't get me wrong, this kid is going to be a phenomenal star. But he's had one good season of Super Rugby. He's got a handful of caps to his name. Mate, you'll put him in front of that Springbok freaking war machine. But they're on a bit of a harding here. They've got a really tough Northern tour after this. So they've got us, and then they've got the Betters Low. God forbid that it won't lose that. Then Ireland, France, and England, and I think it's Scotland. It's a tough season for them. And if you're not getting momentum, you're not winning, you're going to struggle. They lose Geordie Barrett and Rico Ione next year. They're both on sabbaticals. They've had to hit the ground running, and they're struggling. But the one thing where you got to doff your cap to Razor is he's sticking with Barrett and Rico in the centres. I know that there's a lot of people that don't like it, but I think they're a good combination.
I'm not convinced, mate. I'll be honest.
Yeah, no, there's a lot that I want.
Yeah.
But what he's also done is he's shifted the experience to the bench, which is and that's what I was saying earlier. To win Test rugby, you got to have your best players on the end. You saw it when they beat Ireland. Whitelock was the guy on the field getting that turnover.
Great point. Yep, great point.
Now they've got TJ Perinora, Anton Leonard-Brown, Bowden Barrett coming off the bench. Mate, there's 290 Test caps there. So, no, that's good. TJ will control the game really well. He'll kick. He'll be good like that. Barrett can have a big impact off the bench. So there, and also like Ofa Tuangafasi. I mean, he got the card, but his experience been around a long time now. And same as Luke's been around a while, but he's always had concussion issues. But he's a really good leader.
You got Jacobson, Blackadder, and Papali'i combined, and you moulded them together. You might get one fit player for a season.
Yeah, something like that.
Is that what you're saying?
It's Blackadder and him are both the same. Like they just, even at training, apparently they just go too hard.
Trip over their own shoelaces, but
no, they don't know not going full smack.
And just we discussed it before going live. The genius of what Russie's done between selecting Sia as captain to building wins, build trust in the country, and then obviously for a much higher purpose of what Springboks' intention is. I heard Sonny Bill Williams speaking to the Irish media outlet Off the Ball about the fact that 50%, and I'm pretty sure I got this right, 50% of players globally are from Pacific descent. Now, that doesn't translate to the back office, to middle management at New Zealand. South Africa certainly are a country that can probably relate in some contexts, over the journey that we've been as a democracy. In terms of that sort of inner desire, that thing that's going to get you off the ground that half a second quicker when you are clutching at straws, when you are knackered on 70 minutes. What are your comments around it, mate? Do you think there's some substance there?
Yeah, no, definitely. And, that's what Russie's done incredibly well. We've got to watch out here. Is when the last time we beat the All Blacks 3-0 was under Peter de Villiers in 2009. And that's when he had the same things, and he was, you got to play for the country you're representing. You want to make people proud. You want people to be proud of their country. What Peter de Villiers also did, which hadn't been done for a very long time, was he invited the All Blacks into the Springbok locker room. And when they were in there, all the coaches and McCaw and some of the senior players noted how that was all the messaging, and that they were playing for this higher purpose as a bigger collective. You're representing your village, you're representing yourself, your family. A lot of the South Africans are quite religious. There's that whole aspect.
Yes, absolutely.
I suspect these All Blacks are going to be learning that when they're over there. New Zealand at the moment is not in a great space on a variety of fronts. And they will see they've got an opportunity to unify the people, make them proud to be Kiwis and what it means to be a New Zealander again. And Razor's the kind of guy that will be able to talk into that. It also comes back to what you're saying with players of Polynesian descent. Coming back to the village, your family, your lineage, all of that is really important. He's really good at talking into that too.
Yes.
So, mate, there's the potential that while we might beat them 2-0, we're going to also make them stronger. And we need to be aware of that. But listen,
that's the beauty of sport, right? Is it's whether it's cyclical or otherwise. Yeah, when you set the bar, as New Zealand did for the best part of 20-25 years, you're the one that's going to be chased, right? And so it's tough to stay on at the peak, not only get there, but actually remain on top of the peak.
Well, I mean, when you say it, and you've got to think about it from a numbers perspective. So, you've just said, apparently, so half the players are of Polynesian descent. Okay. There's not even 1 million Fijians. There's 200,000 Tongans. I'm not quite sure what the Samoan population is. Obviously, got, in New Zealand, there's not even, I think it's 780,000 to 900,000 Maori. They are really small populations, but look at what an impact they've had on our game. And New Zealand is all. New Zealand's a population of, we're only going on just over 5 million people. But they've won 76% of the test matches they've played since rugby has been played.
Yeah.
How they've done it is unbelievable. But they just had a golden era where they had this small population, but they happened to have the two best players probably the world's ever seen playing at the same time in Carter and McCall.
MacArthur, he'd
Let's
be a
see.
good player.
Yeah.
On a separate pod, and again, I'm just conscious that I want to do a snapshot on New Zealand in a bit more detail. But my big analogy with All Black rugby is very much the same as Australian cricket. When you have a Langer to Ponting to the War brothers to War to McGrath and the like, Stuart McGill could have walked into near enough every team in the world, but he was behind the world's greatest spinner. When you look at the current Australian team, now the current Australian team went through a dip, but they have been back to number one. But when you rank the teams against each other, there's only one winner, right? And that's that team of the 90s, 2000s, right? The team now, Smith and maybe Cummings might get a game. There's no Gilchrist, anymore. There's no, Hall of Fame, once in a generation top players outside of potentially those two. And we saw Barrett when he started playing for New Zealand, always coming off the bench, always make an impact. And I think that was for the first 30 or 40 tests. Now we're getting guys that are getting to 30, 40 games. Like I say, we're unsure as to where they're at. So, look, it's a dip for Kiwi rugby. It shows you how good they are and have been, because the dip is not to the dip that we've been through prior to Rusty.
They still went to a World Cup final. They lost by 1 point, and they were winning until the 73rd minute on the weekend.
But for Kiwis to think that, you mentioned 70-odd%, I think obviously that stat was high 80s, early 90s, when they were the most winning team in sports. And so, the reality is the competition's better, and you've come back a peg or two, and so that levels the playing field a huge amount. Now, just in terms of any final comments, mate, on the team for this weekend?
I'm quite keen to see how Cortez and Damian McKenzie go. They're obviously the two chief halfbacks. I like Cortez, but maybe it's a bit early for him. Let's see how they go. But no, overall, listen, it's a good game. If they get their short passing working against our rush defence, we might be in a bit of trouble again. But I'm assuming we've probably worked on that this week. And sorry, what I mean by that is that rush defence, you want short little passes and say 2 or 3 of them, and then the long balls, because the long balls, the rush defence can get up in you. But so let's see if they've learnt and how they get on. I think it's going to be another cracker of a test match. Hopefully we're not talking about the referee, because everyone here has been talking about referee. No one spoke about how good Sasha was, or how good Timothy Williams was.
I did love the Jeff and Mills show where they must have showed the Bungie try, no try 87 times. I mean, they're talking about another try, and they're showing that try.
So, let's see. But the good news story is where rugby is still alive and well, and we've got our priorities right. That's just worth chatting to. Rusty said they didn't cite Sam Cane because he apologised to Sia. And then the second thing is they've let Makazole not play this weekend because he's got his first kid coming.
Big up to Makazole and Pimpy. And, what a hero, mate.
What a hero, mate. What a story. Before these teams were announced, I thought the All Blacks will do it. Now that I've seen the teams, I'm going, and this will be an arm wrestle. It's not going to be pretty.
All right, Dwight, stop fluffing around. Let's get to the point. What Shoey are you putting on the line? What's the score line? Where are you placing your head for one of these cheeky bad boys? Because I'll tell you what, it's beer with a nice hint of cheese when they come out of these. I'll tell you, nice little hint of cheese.
Especially with your feet. I'm going to go Boks by 5.
I was literally going to go Boks by 4. You've got 5, all right? I'll hold you to it. I've got 4. Thanks for everyone for listening. There will be follow-up podcasts in terms of reaction to the game. Thank you all for your kind words. Look forward to speaking to you soon. Cheers.